So this week, the world was treated to yet another flotilla trying to break the blockade of Gaza. And the media covered it like it was some kind of heroic humanitarian rescue mission. I want to tell you what it actually was, because this flotilla, like every flotilla before it, was built on a lie. And not just one lie, several lies. And I'm going to walk you through every single one of them, because if you understand what these flotillas are really about, you'll understand something much bigger about how the propaganda war against Israel actually works. So let's get right into it. First, the history. This isn't a story that begins now. Okay, the flotilla story didn't start this week. It starts in 2010, in May of 2010 to be exact. A ship called the Mavi Marmara set sail toward Gaza as part of a larger flotilla. The organizers, a Turkish Islamist group called the IHH, presented it to the world as a humanitarian mission. Innocent civilians bringing aid to suffering Palestinians. When Israeli naval commandos boarded the vessel, they were attacked with metal pipes, with knives, with a soldier's own weapon turned against him. 9 of the activists were killed in the ensuing confrontation after they initiated violence against the soldiers. 10 Israeli servicemen were wounded, 1 seriously. This was the birth of the modern flotilla as a political weapon against Israel. And it worked brilliantly. Not as humanitarian aid, of course, because it wasn't, but as a propaganda operation. It made international headlines, it damaged Israel's image, and it created a diplomatic crisis. And now they're doing it again. Bigger, more sophisticated, but the same playbook. Now let's talk about Turkey and Turkey's role here, because this is the crucial context that almost nobody is talking about. The same IHH, that's the organization that organized it, which is, as I said, a Turkish Islamist organization. That same IHH that organized the Mavi Marmara way back in 2010 is behind the current flotilla operation as well. And these are not random concerned citizens. Now, the IHH will tell you that they're a humanitarian, independent NGO funded by private donations, and technically that's true. But here's what that framing obscures. Experts and international monitors, including NGO Monitor and the Center for American Progress, describe the IHH not as a genuine independent civil society organization, but as what's known as a GONGO, G-O-N-G-O, a government-organized, non-governmental organization. That's right, government-organized, non-governmental organization. That's a real term. It describes groups that walk and talk like independent charities, but exist to advance the political agenda of the government they're aligned with, or the ruling party, while giving that government plausible deniability. After all, it was just an independent, non-governmental organization. It's just a nonprofit. The IHH is a gongo for Erdogan's AKP government. The AKP is the ruling party. That's Erdogan's party. And the IHH is one of their gongos, one of their government-organized non-governmental organizations. Its operations consistently align with Erdogan's foreign policy. It receives logistical and diplomatic backing from the Turkish state. And Israel has designated the IHH as a terrorist organization since 2008 due to its documented support for Hamas. Think about what that means. Erdogan gets the propaganda value of a flotilla confrontation with Israel, the headlines, the images, the international outrage against Israel, without his fingerprints actually being on it. It's a state operation, but it has a mask of being an independent NGO. And Erdogan's sympathy for Hamas is not subtle, and it's not a secret. He refers to Hamas leaders as brothers and freedom fighters. He has hosted Hamas political leadership in Istanbul. And under his watch, Turkey has become one of the primary diplomatic shields for Hamas on the world stage. So when we talk about who's behind these flotillas, we're not talking about just a bunch of woke whack jobs from Europe who are trying to virtue signal. We're not just talking about leftist activists. We're not talking about independent humanitarian activists who happen to disagree with Israeli policy. That's how it's being framed, but that's not what it is. We are talking about an Islamist organization operating as an instrument of Turkey, a NATO member government, a government that has made backing Hamas a centerpiece of its foreign policy. That is the backstory here. Now let's get to the core claim. The flotilla organizers and their supporters in the media and in international bodies insist that Israel's naval blockade of Gaza is illegal, that it constitutes collective punishment, that it's a war crime. This is false. It's completely false. And it's not even a close call. The San Remo Manual on International Law, applicable to armed conflicts at sea, recognized by the United Nations, by NATO, by international courts as customary international law, is very clear on this point. A naval blockade is legal when it is publicly declared, impartially applied, and does not aim to starve a civilian population, but rather to prevent military materials from reaching a combatant. Israel's blockade meets every one of those criteria. It was publicly declared, it has been consistently applied, and its explicit purpose is to prevent weapons from reaching Hamas, a terrorist organization that has fired tens of thousands of rockets at Israeli civilians. You know, the anti-Israel activists love to claim that Gaza is an open-air prison and that Israel has laid siege to Gaza for years. Well, no one denies that Hamas has thousands and thousands of weapons and launched thousands of rockets at Israel. Where do they think they got all that stuff? Where do they think they got all of it? Where did it come from if Gaza's been under siege? Every day, lies about Israel spread online faster than the truth can catch up. Charlie Kirk saw this problem clearly. You may be aware of the famous letter that he wrote to Prime Minister Netanyahu about how Israel could tell its story more effectively. And before he was murdered, he was working with the team at Israel 365, where we began building a solution, what Charlie named the Israel Truth Network, a rapid response system delivering clear, accurate, user-friendly content straight to people who can use it. Go to theisraeltruthnetwork.org, sign up for daily briefs, and join the fight for truth. The flotilla organizers know all of this, which is why they don't actually engage with the legal argument. They know that the Israel's blockade is legal. They never make a real legal case. They just repeat the word illegal and shout it loudly and often, counting on the fact that most people won't look it up. And if enough, well-dressed and important people in media say that it's illegal, the blockade is illegal, then I guess the blockade is illegal, right? That's how it works. Now, here's the part I really want you to hear, because this is where the cruelty of this operation becomes most apparent. The flotillas are presented as humanitarian missions, aid for starving Gazans, baby formula, medicine, prosthetic limbs, the whole package. But ask yourself a simple question. If your goal is to get aid into Gaza, why not take Israel up on its offer to carry out inspections on the cargo and deliver it through authorized channels at the port of Ashdod? This option has been made available to the flotilla organizers. It's always available. Well, the answer is obvious, because getting aid into Gaza was never the point of these things anyway. Here's what we know about the actual humanitarian situation in Gaza right now. Since the ceasefire began last October, over 55,000 truckloads of humanitarian aid have entered the Gaza Strip. The United States' own Board of Peace, the body overseeing aid delivery under UN Security Council Resolution 2803, and let's remember that the Board of Peace is not only Americans, it has representatives of Arab nations on there as well. That Board of Peace has stated publicly that 100% of Gaza's food needs are being met by the shipments of aid that are going in on a daily basis. Let me say that again. 100% of food needs are being met according to the United States government-led Board of Peace. There is a massive amount of aid going into Gaza, and that's been true throughout the war since shortly after October 7th. I have documented this extensively since the beginning of the war on this channel. I've written about it, and if you need to find more information about it, just Google my name and the starvation hoax, and you'll find an article that I wrote, an extensive article I wrote about the entire propaganda campaign against Israel on the grounds that not enough aid is going into Gaza, a complete and utter lie. The data proves it. The problem, and this is a real problem that I've talked about extensively on this channel, is that Hamas intercepts much of that aid. They sell it at exorbitant prices to the civilian population. They use it as a tool of political control and to recruit new recruits to Hamas. Hamas has made an estimated $500 million selling humanitarian aid to the very people it claims to represent. The number's probably much higher than that. I think that's an old estimate. So when a flotilla shows up, claiming to be the cavalry riding in to save the starving Palestinians, understand what's actually happening. The aid problem in Gaza is a Hamas problem, if there is an aid problem. And the flotilla does absolutely nothing to address it. In fact, by strengthening Hamas's narrative, it actually makes things worse. So what's it all really about? If it's not about humanitarian aid, what's the goal? It's about delegitimization, pure and simple. Every flotilla, whether it succeeds or fails, generates exactly the same outcome. International headlines portraying Israel as a brutal aggressor blockading innocent civilians. Every interception is filmed, edited, and broadcast in a way designed to produce maximum outrage. Every statement from the flotilla organizers is crafted to push the narrative that Israel is committing genocide, that the blockade is a weapon of starvation, that Israeli soldiers are attackers and activists are victims. It's a military operation using cameras instead of guns. And it's extraordinarily effective. The people who organize these flotillas, the agents of Erdogan in Turkey, they understand something very important. They don't need to win on the water. They need to win in the court of public opinion. And every time Israel enforces its legal blockade, as it must, it hands them footage they can use. This is why I say these flotillas are not just useless. They're not just silly. They are actively harmful to the people they claim to care about, to the people they claim to be helping. They do not deliver aid that wouldn't otherwise arrive. They do not relieve suffering. They do not advance peace. What they do is generate propaganda. They inflame tensions, and they provide diplomatic cover for one of Iran's proxies. They don't help Palestinians. They help Hamas. Look, I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. The more you know about this conflict, the actual history, the actual laws, the actual facts on the ground, who's behind all the different organizations, the clearer the picture becomes. These flotillas are not humanitarian missions. They are information operations organized by Islamist groups with ties to Hamas, backed by a Turkish government that has made anti-Israel politics its calling card, and designed from start to finish to produce images and narratives that demonize Israel on the world stage. The blockade is legal. The aid is flowing. The people of Gaza are being failed not by Israel's navy, but by Hamas, the terrorist organization that rules them with an iron fist and has spent 18 years using them as human shields and propaganda props. That's the truth, and no flotilla is going to change it. Thanks for watching. Please share this video. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.